Now, there is an ongoing dispute between Egypt and Germany. It's about the world-famous bust of the ancient Egyptian queen Nefertiti.
Something extraordinary was hiding inside one of the most recognizable faces in human history, and no one knew it for over 3,000 years. The bust of Nefertiti has sat behind museum glass in Berlin for more than a century, drawing millions who stared into that serene, painted face and assumed they saw exactly what ancient Egypt intended. They did not. Beneath the smooth stucco surface of that iconic queen lay a second face, older, more weathered, and unmistakably human. Its discovery through modern CT scanning technology changed everything scholars believed they understood about how the ancient world constructed beauty. The woman behind the icon, who Nefertiti really was. Nefertiti lived through one of the most turbulent periods ancient Egypt ever produced, and she was no passive presence within it. Born around 1370 BC, she became chief consort to the pharaoh Akhenaten, a ruler whose reign was so radical that the priests and successors who followed him spent decades trying to erase every trace of it. Her name means, "The Beautiful One has come forth," a phrase quoted endlessly since her bust became famous, though it barely captures who she actually was. Nefertiti reigned during the 18th dynasty alongside Akhenaten, and the two are credited with engineering one of the most audacious religious transformations in the ancient world, a transformation so complete it was buried the moment its architects were gone. Akhenaten's reign, dated roughly 1353 to 1336 BC, was built around dismantling Egypt's polytheistic order. He declared Aten, the solar disk, the single supreme deity, abolished the old priestly hierarchies, and moved Egypt's capital to a new city built from nothing in the desert. Akhetaten, known today as Tel El Amarna. That is where the bust was made, and 3,000 years later, where it was found. Nefertiti's presence in this period was strikingly active rather than ceremonial. She appears in Amarna art driving chariots, performing rituals beside Akhenaten, and in at least one instance, smiting enemies, an image previously reserved for the pharaoh alone. The Amarna period also produced a distinct artistic style, breaking from centuries of rigidly idealized royal portraiture towards something more naturalistic, with softer bodies and fuller faces that seem observed rather than templated. The sculptor Thutmose, holding the title King's Favorite and Master of Works, ran the workshop responsible for royal portraits, where he balanced the naturalistic impulses of the Amarna style against Egypt's deep tradition of presenting royalty in idealized form. His workshop, excavated millennia later, held plaster casts, unfinished busts, and composite statues, evidence of a studio in active experimentation. Nefertiti bore 6 daughters, and Amarna art depicts the royal family with a domestic intimacy unmatched in Egyptian dynastic art. The couple and their children shone together beneath the rays of the Aten in scenes with no real parallel elsewhere in Egyptian visual history. Around the 12th year of Akhenaten's reign, she vanishes from the record entirely, a disappearance that has produced a wide range of competing scholarly theories. Some researchers propose she died. Others argue she fell from royal favor. A theory that has gained real scholarly traction holds that she continued to reign afterward under a new name, as the female pharaoh Neferuaten, filling the power vacuum before the young Tutankhamun took the throne. That possibility remains one of the most intriguing open questions in Egyptology. What is certain is that once Akhenaten died, his successors pursued a deliberate campaign of erasure, tearing down temples, defacing monuments, and chiseling both the pharaoh's and the queen's names from inscriptions wherever they could be found. Amarna was abandoned to the desert, and Nefertiti disappeared twice. First from her own civilization's record, then from a world determined to forget the period entirely. That erasure matters directly to what scientists later found inside her portrait. The bust is not merely a beautiful object. It is one of the few surviving images of a woman whose power and existence nearly vanished from history altogether. And what modern technology found sealed inside it added an unexpected layer to that story. The December that changed art history. How the bust left Egypt. On December 6, 1912, German archaeologists, led by Ludwig Borchardt, excavating at Tel El Amarna, uncovered a painted limestone bust in the ruined storeroom of an ancient sculptor's workshop, nearly perfectly preserved, wearing the tall, flat-topped blue crown that marked her as Nefertiti. The dig was funded by Berlin merchant James Simon, and Borchardt's diary called it the most lifelike Egyptian artwork the team had ever seen. The bust stands 49 centimeters tall, weighs about 20 kilograms, and consists of a limestone core coated in painted stucco. Its only visible flaw was a missing left quartz iris, never recovered despite a reward Borchardt offered. What followed has fueled controversy for over a century. Excavation finds from each season were divided between the foreign teams and Egyptian authorities under a system called partage. That division, overseen in January 1913 by French antiquities inspector Gustave Lefebvre, listed the bust in language critics have long called deliberately vague, describing it as a painted bust of a princess rather than the unmistakable portrait of a queen that it obviously was. Egyptian authorities have argued for over a century that Borchardt actively concealed the bust's true importance from the inspector so it would remain on the German side of the split. German authorities have consistently maintained that the division was conducted legally and in line with the accepted practices of the period. The dispute has never been resolved to either side's satisfaction. The bust reached Berlin, was kept privately for years, and was only donated to the Prussian State Museums in 1920, going on public display in 1924, 12 years after its discovery. That long concealment has itself been cited as evidence of bad faith. Once unveiled, Nefertiti became an overnight sensation, her face reproduced on postcards, stamps, and magazine covers across Europe. Egypt demanded her return the same year, the first in an unbroken sequence of demands that continues today. The bust survived the Second World War, hidden in a Thuringian salt mine before returning to Berlin, and since 2009 has stood in the restored Neues Museum, drawing over 500,000 visitors annually. For decades, the surface was the only face anyone examined. What lay beneath it was only revealed once a radiologist, not an archaeologist, turned hospital-grade equipment on the object. Inside the machine, what the CT scanner found beneath 3,000 years of stucco. The first attempt at imaging the bust came in 1992, when available equipment generated cross-sectional images at 5mm intervals, coarse enough only to confirm that the object consisted of a limestone core beneath painted stucco, but far too imprecise to detect anything more specific about that structure. Scholars assumed the stone was purely structural, a support for the real sculpture on the surface, and because no one had particular reason to suspect otherwise, no one looked closer for over a decade. That changed in 2006, when Dr. Alexander Huppertz, director of the Imaging Science Institute at Berlin's Charité Hospital, led a new scan using far more advanced technology. The project applied three-dimensional post-processing to examine structures just 1 to 2 millimeters beneath the stucco, with clarity impossible in 1992. The findings, published in the April 2009 issue of Radiology, drew immediate worldwide attention. The scan revealed not a structural support, but a second complete human face carved directly into the limestone, rendered with a precision that stunned researchers. It was no rough sketch, but a fully realized portrait, recognizably the same person as the stucco exterior, yet not the same face. The differences were deliberate and consequential. The scan also showed stucco layers varying considerably in thickness across the bust, evidence of intentional artistic decisions rather than uniform coating. Material was built up strategically in some areas and left thin in others, letting the limestone beneath show through more in certain places than others. Adjustments the research team interpreted as deliberate choices made to shape the relationship between the two faces. The scan further identified previously undetected fissures and structurally vulnerable areas in the shoulders, along the lower surface, and at the rear of the crown, giving conservators new and actionable guidance on handling and protecting the object going forward. Dr. Hupperitz described the scan as the first conclusive proof that the limestone core was itself a skillfully rendered artwork, not merely a support structure, reshaping scholarly understanding of one of the most studied objects in Egyptian art. Technology had looked through 3,000 years of finished surface and found something no eye had ever detected, a face carved in stone with a great deal to say about how ancient craftsmen shaped a queen for eternity. What the hidden face revealed, the truth about ancient beauty standards. The inner face differed from the outer one in ways that were subtle yet significant. The limestone face showed creases at the corners of the mouth, less prominent cheekbones, a different treatment around the eyes, and a small bump along the nose ridge, none of which appear on the finished stucco exterior. That exterior smoothed the mouth creases, built up the cheekbones with added gypsum, leveled the nasal bump, and refined the eyes into the symmetrical, ageless face, reproduced endlessly ever since. Researchers concluded the differences were intentional, not accidental. Someone decided the limestone face was not the one the finished object would present to the world. The stucco created a more idealized version of the same features, filling in the lines of expression, straightening the bridge of the nose, and elevating the cheekbones, retaining the portrait's essential character while removing the specific markers of a real, aging human being living through real time. This finding is remarkable precisely because the Amarna period is known for introducing naturalism into Egyptian royal art. Yet here, in the era's most famous surviving object, is physical proof that even its supposedly realistic portraiture was carefully idealized before completion. The process was not unlike modern photo retouching, carried out instead in gypsum and limestone 3,000 years ago. Some scholars believe the alterations came on royal instruction, that the finished bust needed to present an idealized queen beyond what the limestone alone achieved. Others suggest the rough limestone portrait was simply standard workshop practice, a foundation for the more polished stucco finish that carried the true artistic statement. The scan cannot say who ordered the changes, only that the world has been venerating a second draft, while a more individual, more human first draft remains sealed inside it. The scan findings also helped settle a separate 2009 controversy, when Swiss art historian Henri Stierlin argued the bust was a modern forgery made in 1912, possibly as a pigment test later passed off as genuine. Stierlin cited the delayed publication of documentation, the unusual cut of the shoulders, and the missing left eye as inconsistencies, and claimed the limestone core had never been independently dated. Berlin's Egyptian Museum dismissed the claim, and the CT findings became decisive evidence of authenticity. The layered internal structure, with its deliberately modified limestone face, matches documented ancient Egyptian technique and is far beyond what a 1912 forger could have achieved. Whether the inner face is an actual observational record of Nefertiti or simply an earlier artistic draft, the scan cannot resolve. What it proves, with the authority of modern medical imaging, is that the face the world fell in love with was a construction, and the first draft still waits behind it. The endless battle. Who owns the face the world built? The repatriation dispute over the bust is one of the longest-running standoffs in cultural property history. Egypt has formally demanded its return since 1924, the year it was first displayed in Berlin, launching an unbroken sequence of demands across every subsequent government. In 1925, Egypt threatened to ban German excavations entirely. In 1929, it proposed an artifact exchange, which Germany declined. In 1933, senior Nazi officials, including Hermann Göring, considered returning the bust as a diplomatic gesture intended to cultivate Egyptian political goodwill. Hitler personally intervened to refuse the transfer, calling Nefertiti a treasure he would never surrender under any circumstances, and planning her as the centerpiece of a grand new museum in the remodeled capital he called Germania. That project never materialized. The bust instead spent the war years hidden in a Thuringian salt mine alongside other major Berlin collections discovered by Allied forces in 1945. When it came under American control after the war, Egypt formally requested that the United States hand it over directly, and the request was declined. Decades of the same pattern followed: periodic Egyptian requests, consistent German refusals, and a widening divergence between the two countries' accounts of 1913, with Germany citing legal procedure and Egypt alleging deliberate deception of the French inspector. Neither account is fully verifiable from the surviving documentation today. The dispute intensified in 2024 under Zahi Hawass, the Egyptologist long pressing for repatriation. Hawass launched a petition gathering more than 200,000 signatures by late 2024, tying the campaign to the newly completed Grand Egyptian Museum near Giza, a 5.4 million square foot facility he cited as proof Egypt could properly house the bust. Partially opened in 2023, the museum was drawing at least 15,000 visitors daily, undercutting Germany's older argument that Egyptian institutions lacked adequate display infrastructure. Germany's position, held by the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation, which oversees the Neues Museum, has not moved. The bust is declared too fragile to transport safely, the legal case for repatriation deemed insufficient, and the Foundation's official statement continues to assert there are no active negotiations with Egypt over the object's return. That last point is accurate and has been for a very long time. There have been no negotiations, only demands on one side and refusals on the other, cycling around the same unresolved questions with increasing exhaustion on both sides and no visible path to resolution. The bust's value has been estimated at roughly 400 million euros, and with over 500,000 annual visitors traveling to see it, its economic and cultural weight in Berlin complicates any serious return discussion regardless of the ethics involved. This dispute has become a flashpoint in the broader reckoning over colonial-era museum acquisitions, a conversation intensifying considerably in recent years as European institutions confront the moral claims of the countries their collections were removed from during periods of foreign occupation and unequal legal arrangements. Museums across the continent have faced mounting pressure to re-examine how thousands of objects, from Benin bronzes to Parthenon marbles, ended up in their galleries in the first place, and Egypt's demand for the return of the Nefertiti bust fits squarely within that larger pattern of nations, asking what justice actually looks like a century after the fact. Nefertiti sits at its center, not because she is the most extreme case of the phenomenon, but because she is by far the most famous one, and because the documented ambiguity surrounding her removal in 1913 gives both sides genuine material to keep arguing with. German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt's own field notes, the disputed division of finds under Egypt's antiquities laws at the time, and the accusations that the bust was deliberately undervalued or concealed from Egyptian inspectors all remain open questions that neither side has ever fully settled, which is precisely why the argument refuses to die. What the whole history makes clear is that this bust is not simply an artifact sitting in the wrong country. It is a pressure point where colonial history, the ethics of early 20th century excavation, and the rights of nations to their own heritage converge without any clean resolution. A question every generation ends up having to confront fresh, whether through formal repatriation requests, museum ethics panels, or simple public outrage that resurfaces every time the bust goes on display. The CT scan gave the public a reason to see the bust differently still, understanding that the face admired for over a century was itself a constructed image, a second version shaped by deliberate choices, made more than 3,000 years ago by an artist working under royal instruction to present an idealized version of the Queen. That discovery added an unexpected layer to an already complicated story, because it meant the object at the heart of an international standoff was never even a straightforward representation of its subject to begin with. The face inside, with its creases and its small, imperfect bump of a nose, has remained sealed away through all the centuries of veneration, diplomatic standoff, and public fascination that followed, hidden beneath a mask of stucco that the world mistook for the whole truth. Whether Nefertiti herself would have preferred the face the world sees or the one it has never seen is not something any scanner can answer. She left no record of her own vanity or her own comfort with artifice, and the ancient Egyptians who commissioned the bust were working within artistic conventions that had little to do with modern ideas about authenticity. But the fact that both exist, layered one inside the other and carried forward together, through 3 millennia of silence, may be the strangest and most haunting thing modern science has ever found inside a work of ancient art. If this story captivated you as much as it did us, we want to hear from you right now in the comments section below. Which part of this discovery surprised you the most? Did you already know that the bust of Nefertiti contained a completely different face hidden beneath its surface? Or did that one genuinely catch you off guard? Do you think Germany should return the bust to Egypt after more than a century of demands? Or does the fact that it has become so central to Berlin's cultural identity complicate the answer for you? Drop your thoughts below, because this is exactly the kind of conversation we live for. And while you are here, do us one small favor. Hit that like button if you found this video genuinely interesting, and subscribe to this channel if you want more deep dives into the stories behind history's greatest mysteries and the secrets hidden inside the things we think we already understand. We put out new content regularly, and every single subscriber helps us keep doing what we love. We will see you in the next one.